Good evening, book lovers. I'm your host, Matt Joudrey, publisher of At Bay Press, and this is season 2, episode 2 of The Front Matter presented by At Bay Press. Tonight, we have a very special guest on our show, but before I introduce my esteemed guest, I would like to take a moment to offer our land acknowledgement. Tonight, we are broadcasting from Treaty 1 territory, and At Bay Press acknowledges we are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Tonight, our bookstore guest is Jenn Baerg Steyn. And Jenn is the proprietor of Yellowknife Books in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Canada's northmost bookstore, serving Yellowknife, the Northwest Territories, and the rest of the world since 1979. Their mission is to highlight and support Northern and Indigenous writers, publish in English, French, and Indigenous languages. They actively seek out rare and out-of-print Northern and Indigenous titles. Welcome, Jenn. How are you this evening?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I'm so excited to chat with you. I also want to take a moment to say that we also have our marketing and publicity specialist present tonight, who will be joining me on every podcast going forward, Dani Arieli. Welcome, Dani.
Welcome. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Jenn, first question. And I sort of picked this question as the kickoff question for so many of our podcasts because I think it's something that everybody wants to know, myself included. What compelled or inspired you to pursue work as a bookseller?
Oh, okay. I'm going to preface this by saying right off the bat, I have ADD and I have a tendency to tell very long stories. So I'm going to try to condense the thought process behind purchasing the bookstore from the previous and original owner, Judith Drinnan. So for context, I did work for Judith for a year. My partner and I moved up to Yellowknife from Vancouver. He needed mental health work up here. While there was a need in Vancouver, full-time work was hard to come by. So we moved up here, both of us technically without jobs, and the support of our family. It was a wild ride. And eventually there was a position that opened up at the bookstore. And I basically had to go in and beg Judith to hire me. One of the biggest challenges that the North has is, and I experienced this too as a small business owner, is the government pays incredibly well. So anyone that could technically apply for a government job is more than likely going to apply for a government job. And if they are applying to work in the private sector, they are more than likely still actively seeking a government job. So in Judith's mind, I was a lost cause because she'd hire me and I'd peace out. So she put all this effort into training me. And Judith, the store uses Book Manager. So anyone who's used it knows it's not a particularly intuitive system, the process of training someone, all of these things. Judith is like, no. And I was like, please take me. I need a job. And I worked for her for about a year. And then I did. Actually didn't leave for the government initially. I left. I had done a season of ice road dispatching up here. So not like the ice road truckers, but the ice road truckers. I had dispatched and the pay was exceptionally well. I had master's debt, so they seduced me back, and then I got a government job. All that to say, I had worked at the bookstore. It wasn't like some weird pipe dream that I had established that I wanted to do. I worked in the job I had was for the government, was in healthcare. It was what I had done in not that job, but the general sphere was what I had done in BC. And my partner and I, pre-COVID, were discussing whether or not I'd go and get another master's, but this time in counseling, and sort of take that as a way to get a job that I actually sort of wanted to do. because I had been previously, they call it a spiritual health practitioner. It's basically a chaplain, but not assigned to a religion. You're kind of the person for everyone. So something in that vein, but a job that I could feel more fulfilled in. And then COVID happened and the territory was in effect locked down. We don't have a very robust healthcare system up here for acute needs. So like our ICU beds were incredibly limited.
Right.
So the easiest option was to shut down travel.
Sure.
And so all of a sudden the master's program that would have required some in-person work was no longer feasible. And so the next option sort of came out of some backstory that's not really necessary, but we were like, so if we're going to do anything else, what would that be? Like if I could do any job, my partner asked me, and I was like, well, I would go back and work for Judith. And so that sort of like prompted this discussion of, okay, so if you would go back and work for her and that is meaningful to you, would you want to buy the business? So Judith is a commanding presence, slightly terrifying. So I had help. I wrote
like
a
all
little
booksellers.
that was basically like, are you going to retire? And like, would you be deeply offended if I like asked to take the store from you?
Right.
So she was somewhat happy, I think, but it took about a year to get like all the like stuff figured out. So that was
it's not an overnight process, is it?
Oh no, it definitely wasn't. So it technically took possession of the business in January 2022. So on the heels of COVID here, the territory, because we locked down, did relatively well. We kind of had a captive audience in the sense that it wasn't worth traveling out of the territory. So everyone stayed and then sort of had to like find things to do. So the store did relatively well because of that. Like it got through sort of some of the hiccups that I think Southern businesses might have had to face.
Were you shipping a lot of books at that point?
Was
there a lot of internet orders because of the
sort of
fringes of the pandemic?
Judith probably would have been like, because that hit her more. We do a fair amount of shipping to the communities, much more for like, we are the main supplier for school textbooks in the communities.
Cool.
Or resources. And then we do offer, that's Theo in the back. If you
Hi, Theo.
The orange one.
We're talking about a cat, by the way, just so everybody knows.
For those who cannot see, yes.
Small orange cat. There are three. Theo has graced us with his presence right now. Yes, we do shipping. We try to offer sort of flexible deals to the communities. So sure. I believe right now it's about $300 for free shipping. And then if you and your neighbor and your bestie down the street all want to combine your orders and they make that, then as long as you're fine with them being shipped to one location in that community, then we leave it up to you to do with the book.
That's a cool concept. I wonder, this is always a tough question for independently owned bookstores. I wonder about the behemoth, Amazon. And of course, Amazon, in a world where people want instant gratification and they want their items that they purchase as soon as possible. What does that look like for you with regards to the patrons, we'll call it digital patrons, people who buy through the website, because it's obviously a completely different clientele than those that browse the store.
It's funny. I would say our website gets used more by local patrons. Right. So they will like shop from home and then know that they'll get a phone call in the morning that we've like done the work to pull the book for them. The website gets used predominantly by
So
schools.
sorry to interrupt there, Jen. I want to
Yeah.
go back to that because I think that that's a really cool thing. So somebody will call into your shop and say, do you have the following book by the following author? You say yes, and you'll go pull it for them. So
Yeah.
that, and so I love this because I mean, obviously that there's a wonderful example of how your bookstore immediately differentiates itself from Amazon in that one, there's no human like person to person contact
Hmm.
with Amazon, but there is with you, but yet you're still accommodating this sort of lovely personal service.
Yeah, and we try to, like, it's funny, we have our, like, I have a former staff member who will like have her glass of wine on Friday night and like go through, book talk or whatever, and we'll get a Saturday morning like order of 10 or 15 books that she wants, and of course we'll order those. I mean, she's in town, and rather than her coming in, I mean, we do have customers who bring their lists in, but we try to be as much of a, like Judith called it, a concierge type format, which is,
Mhm.
you tell us what you want. If you order
Mhm.
book one, especially if you have kids, I'm more than likely to order book two, three, and four without you asking. So it'll be on the shelf, the next time you come in if your kid really likes it. We also have a pretty much a no questions asked return policy, especially if um, we are recommending a book to a customer. Uh, I've been told time and time again that customers would be mortified to return said book if they didn't like it.
Right.
They feel like it's a judgment on them, and for us, it's like we wanted to make it as low stress as possible. So if I recommend a book to you and you're like, yeah, it sounds good or whatever, or I don't want to say like, oh, that sounds awful, and I'm just going to buy it. Like, if you buy it and you hate it, please bring it back and tell me that you hate it so that I can find
Yeah.
something you like. Like, I'm not offended. So yeah, the website gets used. We try to encourage teachers to use it for their classroom orders because it helps us with simple things like if they call in and ask for a book that has like multiple formats,
Right. Right.
especially
Yeah.
if it's for like an elementary school and then they're asking for like, I love you forever. I'm like, well, do you want the board book? Do you want the paperback? Do you want the
Mm,
hardcover? Like, it's just easier than if you, and then they're like, well, why are you asking me? And I'm like, because I can see that those are my options. So
Right.
what would you like?
So
And that normally makes it a heck of a lot easier for us.
yeah.
yeah, I believe that. And it sort of brings me to my next question, which is what does browsing look like in your store? And I'm really curious about this because browsing is as a person who is of the Gen X generation, I my whole life was like as far as retail was concerned was browsing.
Mhm.
And this is a bit of a complicated question because I also want to get Dani's take on the browsing experience as a much younger generation than myself. What's that like for her? And what does she look forward to? Because I know what I look forward to. I just want to be lost in the aisles and
Mhm.
spend time looking around. And I'm there with two hats, both a reader and a publisher. So I'm there for pleasure. I'm also there for business. I'm looking
Mhm.
at all the different covers to get design ideas. I mean, my background is design. We put out 25 new titles a year. Like we're looking for. So to me, a bookstore serves two purposes on any given day, which is I'm there to look for something to read, but I'm also there because I want to see what other publishers are doing. I'll kick that over to Dani though to see what it's like for her.
Yeah, that's actually funny because I was gonna ask why we think that visiting bookstores like in person is so important in today's world. And for me, as a younger person in the industry, I find that there's just something so special about going to these like in-person places. Like when I go downtown Toronto and I see these kind of little like just these little bookstores I've just never heard of. Like I want to walk in there and I just want to like browse just everything like actually like physically as opposed to like going on like Amazon, for example, because it's like, you know, if there's a title that I'm specifically like looking for, I can just go online and search for it. But once again, it's just the experience of like walking through those aisles in any store really and just being there, like being present and seeing all the other options that you might have not considered as opposed to kind of just seeing them maybe as like pop-ups on a website. It's just it feels, I don't know, it feels more like organic and just special, just being able to, you know, walk the aisles and stuff and browse. So
Do
yeah.
you feel, Dani,
Yeah.
Jen, do you both feel that, because I mean, I can speak to myself on this. Do you both feel that that going into a bookstore and doing that browsing and being
Mhm.
around all of these great stories by these amazing authors and artists and photographers and musicians? I mean, there's books on everything. Do you find that you feel a sense of calm and relax, like that you're relaxed? Do you feel stimulated? What is it?
I mean, if I'm in like a clothing store, I do not feel relaxed at all. But you know, but if it's like a bookstore, yeah, it's there's also the sense of like being surrounded by like those like-minded individuals. Like if I am browsing
Yeah.
for, you know, like a poetry book or something, and it's like knowing that the other people in that store are probably looking for a similar thing, and it even strike up conversations with people if you want, which I've done before. And I think that's part of that like special experience that like you won't get if once again it's an online shopping experience that you're going through. So yeah.
Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the neat things is bookstores are always on the top of my list to see how somebody else uh, envisions a space and how they want to convey what interests them. Because there still is always in purchases some element of bias in what's interesting or how um, whoever like in our store staff can curate a display and how did they come to that and what was the decision process um and then the books that are there like it's because again like yeah you could go online but for example if I searched like we have a dinosaur display in the kids section right now if I search
Love it.
dinosaurs what is the likelihood that I'm going to find like Inhabit Media's like Dinosaurs of the Arctic book it's probably not going to be there. It'll be like all the main like publishers who, you know, Penguin and whoever. It's not to say those aren't cool books, but like the Dinosaur of the Arctic or Dinosaurs of the Arctic book is one of our consistent sellers because it's
Mhm.
both northern and really cool because you're like, okay, this isn't
Right.
how I understood dinosaurs as a kid, and dinosaurs are awesome. And so now I can like
It's
the
amazing.
dinosaurs in the Arctic together.
They
Yeah.
still are a subject matter that will always seem to completely captivate the imagination of younger audiences. And then as we grow into our adulthood, there's this nostalgia about the dinosaur world that it's the mystery, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the fun because there is that yeah the excitement of learning new things as a kid and I think that's part of what I love about bookstores in general it's the like what can I learn today like who is exposing me to something different and yeah I love well I mean that's why I own one I love bookstores and I love how different they can be even when you know the average Canadian independent bookstore that's similar to ours that has to like kind of have everything is going to have a lot of the same similar titles but it's how you present them and what's important to you and sort of where you go from there that makes each bookstore its own unique personality.
Absolutely. Um, I want to dive into the Indigenous connection with your bookstore, in that you guys, of course, right on your front page, you know, your mission is to highlight and support Northern and Indigenous writers. And as a publisher who also publishes work by some of you know the nation's great Indigenous writers, I'm really curious about the types of titles that you try to curate, why, what the reception is of those titles. Yeah, I would love to know.
So I would say that like this is not this is core to Yellowknife Books. So this is not something unique to me. Judith, when she had the store Northwards, so the Writers Festival was one of her sort of pet projects. So the store supports it, but it's its own entity now. So it is also focused on Northern writing. Probably one of the most notable Northerners is Richard Van Camp. And so he has quite a prolific, so he's not from Yellowknife, he's actually from the Fort Smith area, but we consider him local, despite like the territory doesn't have a lot of Northern writers, so we sort of claim him. So Richard is has everything from baby like board books to adult fiction, graphic novel series. So he has like tremendous catalog. He would be sort of our main one. Jamie C. Fournier is originally from Nunavut. He does sort of pass through, so we sort of claim him as
Very cool.
local-ish. And he also has sort of a breadth of a catalog, which is really quite fascinating. When you sort of like pull everything and put it together, you have like horror, and then you have like Lemmings First Christmas board book.
Yeah, right.
So you have the like breadth there. We have Katlia, her English name, Catherine Lafferty. So she also has a fairly, it's would be adult fiction. She actually has a new book coming out at the beginning of April that we're really looking forward to launching. But so she's done biography and adult fiction. So those would be sort of our like key Indigenous writers. Michelle Swallow just published Northern Bull, which
Very
had a
cool.
really great reception and has done incredibly well. And so we've had others. I'm like blanking. I should have had everyone. Laurie Sarkady has her biography. We have Fran Hercombe. Fran came to writing from being a reporter. Bill Braden is a well-known photographer up here. So we feature Bill's, he has photographic sort of histories, I guess would be. So he covered the bridging of the Decho. He has an Aurora book. He did the ice roads. So yeah, we have kind of, that's the main writers, but we have like Cassandra Londenberg. I remember Cassandra's name. They published a poetry book that was basically sort of self-published, this most recent one.
Right.
We have a lot. So Northern Quill, which is now Judith's pet project. So she realized that part of sort of an extension of Northwards was, as the challenge for Northern writers is to be recognized as a viable investment, because we are still a relatively small audience. If you're publishing something that feels more Northern centric, like there's only 40,000 people in the territory.
Jen, I find it true here in Winnipeg. Well, I can speak to many different provinces because we have Indigenous writers in a number of different provinces across the nation. And there is always, at least since I've been in publishing for the last 2 decades, there's always been a challenge at pushing forward marginalized voices into the world, and properly marketing them, and helping those books thrive has always been, I don't want to say difficult, because the books are great. It's just creating this awareness, as you probably well know, is mandatory for marginalized books.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we ran into publishing issues with or like enough print, maybe we'll put it that way, for 2 of our pretty key Indigenous leaders up here had biographies about a year apart and struggled to have stock. And
is that a distribution aspect?
I
What was the
I don't
reason?
know. I don't know if it's a distribution aspect or if it's a perspective that, we'll do one print run and maybe it'll sell. And then all of a sudden
Ah,
we have
right,
people like we've basically cleared you out in and of like for ourselves.
right.
And then it's like trying to explain to locals here, well, we've got to wait until we can get more stock. Or if it's one print run and one print run only, and then all of a sudden it's gone. Um, and so that's part of the reason, like you highlighted at the beginning, that we do seek out rare and out of print books is
I was just going to ask about that. I'm so curious about that as well too. And this is definitely another twofold question in that. As a collector myself, and I mean, I collect, all things ephemera. I love books. I love the artwork, both original and print. Um, I mean, the list, chapbooks, broadsides, the list goes on and on for my collecting tastes. But then, of course, the deeper dive here would be into genre or into various different authoring categories, such as Northern and Indigenous. And I guess I would love to hear Dani's take on this because, again, just going back to that, and sorry, Dani, going back to that younger generation,
Yeah.
it's just a curiosity of mine. Is as a reader and somebody who avidly loves books like you do you collect? Do you or are you consuming more digitally? Like, what does it look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, ever since I was like very young, I always loved, according to my parents at least, I always loved to have a lot of books on the shelf and whatnot and just having it in my hands. Of course, this was, before there was like kind of e-reading and whatnot. And then when that kind of began to like it was kind of like arising and whatnot, I found that I never, I don't know, it for me, it never really stuck. A lot of my like classmates, they adore like Kindle and stuff and like reading online. And it's
Right,
I don't know, it's not like I can understand their whole reason as to why they like it so much is because it's more like convenient for them. And like I
sure.
can kind of see that, but for me, nothing beats having like the physical book in my hands. And I do also like that like aesthetic aspect of having it on my shelf. Behind me, you can't see it, but I have a bunch. I went to this old like chapel like 2 weeks ago and they turned it into this like antique store and I bought like so many like antiquarian books of like poetry
I
and I
love
got
it.
like Wuthering Heights, the whole Jane Austen collection, like all that because for two reasons. One, I want to have them displayed, but two, I just once again I love having those books in my hands. And it goes the same with like contemporary books too. I have so many shelves in my room where it's I'll read a book start to finish and then I want to like put it on my shelf to show the like to myself like I read it and I'm really proud of reading it and I'm I love the book so much so it's I don't think I'm ever going to like solely switch to like e-reading. There's been a few times where I have, but it's like very very like situational. So, yeah.
Interesting. I,
Yeah.
I I love hearing other people's stories about what books mean to them because everything and there's no judgment in any way. Like if you
Yeah.
prefer to have a digital collection and
Mhm.
that's what works for you and you're enjoying the pleasure of reading and expanding a cultural experience for yourself, I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But myself, there's a number of reasons why I collect. I mean, nostalgia has to be at the top of that list.
Sure.
But then the second piece is again the business side. I like keeping really great books around me because I use them as key reference points. And
Mhm.
that is really important to me. But I imagine, Jenn, for somebody like yourself, it's different. And I'm really curious, again, the collector in me just, I can't help but ask this. What are some of the cool, rare, Northern and Indigenous titles that you've seen come through the store?
I would say the rarest and the one that I get the most annoyed at our local customers for having lent out to someone and then are struggling to find is George Blondin's When the World Was New. This is
Mm,
basically impossible to get a hold of.
Right.
It was printed up here by Outcrop, which was like a publishing. They did a magazine and a bunch of other things. So they have some other books that are not as rare. That one, depending on when I can find it, is about $200 or $300.
Right.
And it probably was about $15 when people bought it the first
Sure.
time. So there's a lot of choked, like, oh my goodness, I lent it out to my cousin and they haven't given it back. And I was like, you better find out how to get a hold of that.
Where is
And
it
like,
now?
don't, it's often to Northerners. I'm like, don't give away any of your books. Just assume it's never going in print again and you're never going to find it. So like,
Right.
if it's important to you, do not lend it out. I would say that one's probably the most. The other one, I believe, and I haven't seen it in a long time, would be, uh, it's not an appropriate title, but The Arab Eskimo.
Hmm.
The last time we had it in store, it was about $200. I have not been able to find another copy.
Right.
Um, it would, yeah, I'm trying to think of the other ones that go out of print.
You
But
raise a
it,
really good point there, Jen. In that, again, as a purveyor of modern indigenous books, and then also collections of rare, more antiquated indigenous books, um, and as a collector myself, over the years, I've seen a number of books, many books by very key big publishing houses that would be considered questionable or inappropriate. And I wonder about that, in that, I'm not one to speak to the idea of censorship, because we live in a world right now where censorship seems to be such a pervasive thing. Um, I mean, I have a number of these books in my collection, and they serve as reminders of a world past. And what's that like being what's that like for a bookseller?
I think for the rare and out of print, as um, I kind of let those things slide in the sense that most often those are like books written in the 60s and 70s.
Of course.
Um, and they're specifically asked for and incredibly rare to come across. We're very sensitive though to current issues. So, for
Of course.
example, to use Thomas King as an example,
Yeah.
for any of the pretendians, they either are, well, they're initially moved over into like general fiction. So we have the store separated
Hmm.
with Northern and Indigenous fiction so that folks can find it easily. So they got moved, he got moved over into just general fiction. And then as soon as we were able to return the books, we returned them. We found that it's the easiest way for our community to feel safe, that they don't have a reminder that they had an individual who basically took advantage of them for the benefits of sort of finding a way to, I guess, yeah, utilize the marginalized status as a way to advance their own careers.
You're right.
The same thing with Buffy as well. Their kids' books that we had, even though they were co-authored, were removed. We try to be really mindful that we even, it feels sometimes a little awkward, again, because I'm very
Oh, I
much
think
a
it is.
settler,
I think it is awkward.
to like verify that if something is being put forth as Indigenous or the individual is Indigenous, we try to make sure as clear as we can find it that they actually are affirmed by a specific community. You have, like in the US, that they are, a part of a tribe or whatever, that there's some kind of a fact checking, hopefully. I mean, obviously it's not a perfect system, but we do, if we're going to put our like stamp that this is Indigenous, that we've tried our best to make sure that it's not just some sort of like I think I am, way back when sort of situation. And
Yeah.
if we can't, then we don't bother. We just
Right.
keep them wherever else they are in the store if we feel comfortable enough. If we think that there's sort of a question of ethics there, then they just don't get brought in.
Yeah, no. And it's the same on our side of the fence too, with regards to publishing is, you know, we certainly want to make sure that, we're working with somebody who, has a long-standing history within an Indigenous community. And then on top of that, I think part of it is that a lot of our Indigenous books these days are edited by Indigenous editors. And unless, of course, the author would prefer to work with a specific person who may not be Indigenous. But for the most part, there's this, like as you put it, there is somewhat of a stamp of authenticity that goes along with the integrity aspect of what we're doing. And we are in that world, aren't we, Jen, of trying our best to maintain a level of integrity and hold things to a higher standard, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I think um, the hope is that in having the positions that we respectively have, that that they're seen as, from a financial standpoint, a demand, and both for making sure that there is the ethics side, but also that there's a demand to continue to publish,
Right.
especially like in, to sort of shoehorn in there the languages. So um, we have 11 official languages up here, 9 of which are Indigenous languages, and not all are represented very well when it comes to the publishing side of things. And so that is a big challenge for us. There are obviously it's always the tension, because I think any Indigenous language publication, whether it's English and Indigenous or however, is incredibly important. It's just hard for our communities here when they basically have to um, print their own material for their kids,
Right.
because it's not like Clicho and some of Dani's Lati. Like, we have one book that we consistently stock, whereas it's much easier to have something in Anishinaabe or in Cree, because there's just a larger population base. Not to say that Cree isn't one of our 9 Indigenous languages. It's just not in the Yellowknife area, the largest representation of language speakers.
Very interesting. Language plays a big factor in the books that we publish, in that whenever the author is using portions of their Indigenous language in the text, we typically try to do a translation and a glossary at the end of those translated words for a number of reasons. As you spoke to, the authenticity of the book, but also the opportunity for the reader to experience the language and enjoy cultural enrichment, through the reading of the book, and learning something new about, a culture, a group of peoples that they may not know a lot about. So, Jen, I want to move forward here a little bit because I want to first check with Dani on our time. How we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, we're approaching like the 45-minute mark as of right
Perfect.
now. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of final questions for Jen, and they're really important ones.
Okay.
Jen, what do you think is one of, or the most pressing issue facing bookstores today? And I'm curious about your answer because of your location in the country. So I'm wondering if your answer is going to be somewhat different than, say, a bookseller in Winnipeg or Toronto or Montreal.
Obviously, finance would, would be a big part. I think one of the big challenges, and Dani, you kind of hit on it with regards to the e-reader, is that the
Yep.
Canadian market at least does not have a non sort of specific e-reader. So like
Mm-hmm.
our partner bookstores in the South have now through bookshop.org are now sort of being on ramped into having ebooks as part of what they can sell.
Yeah.
If we could sell that, that would be great. I just don't see Indigo and Kobo or whatever letting indie bookstores in on that pie
Mm-hmm.
anytime soon.
Mhm.
We do use Libro for audiobooks, which has
Right.
been great. I'm almost exclusively an audiobook um, user, just for convenience sake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the other challenge that we have found, um, which would be more of an age specific one, is general literacy,
Yeah.
the desire and value seen in reading. Um, it is nicer that the market seems to sort of have found a way to build in what we call anyone can read books, or reading for everyone. So dyslexic friendly books. There's a few different ones on the market. We definitely stock a lot more of those. And then sort of the rebirth of the choose your own adventure, allowing for an interactive component. And we do really try to educate parents that anything is reading. So yes, the graphic novel does not have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
text in it, but anything is a foot in the door for their kids. But it is essential,
Yeah.
and we do find that there are still a lot of apprehensive and reluctant readers, is sort of the like jargon that's used. And that's concerning, especially for homes where English is the primary home language. So there isn't any perceived other barriers present that would be hindering language acquisition and reading in the language of the home. Um, this isn't, French immersion kids or, children where English is not the primary language struggling. This is kids who have been exposed to the language and should, in theory, feel comfortable reading in it. That is a
Right.
big concern.
Yeah. Yeah. I can give you offer a little bit of hope, Jen, that the publishing community over the last couple of years, at least in Canada, has really made quite a push forward for accessibility in all its formats, especially within the digital world, like the digital formats, the ebooks. But accessibility, I mean, you mentioned dyslexic friendly books. And we're still in our infancy in regards to these programs, but as you said, we are making those small steps forward towards better understanding all the various different readers' needs,
Mm-hmm.
and all the variables involved in that. And there's quite a myriad amount of those, in that we're still learning about where we can make books better and more accessible for all. Ape Press published one of the very first accessible dynamic audiobooks, which for graphic novels.
Oh,
And
cool.
so it was for sight impaired, vision impaired people. And this is described audio. And the author artist that for the book that we had selected also provided described audio in addition to the audio for each one of the works. So it's really, really cool. It's very affecting. And so, like I said, there are cool steps being made forward. So I really thank you for raising those points, because I think they're very valuable to know what a bookseller faces. I have one final question, but before I ask it, I want to ask if Dani has anything that maybe I missed that she would like to ask.
Um, yeah, I guess what role do you think like indie bookstores are really like playing in the Canlit world once again, like in this day and age and whatnot, and everything that's going on?
I think for us, our
Mhm.
one of our biggest roles that we sort of see is the importance of reflecting the diversity of the community back to them.
Mhm.
So we have found like I think it's Barefoot that has done like the multilingual books in like
Mm,
Hindi and
Mhm.
Vietnamese. Like those are huge sellers for us. Like we've had a Ramadan display. Like we try to do pretty much every like holiday. So like
Yeah.
Nowruz, so Persian New Year's this week. We have those books. Um, we like Yellowknife, maybe surprisingly for anyone who hasn't been here, is a particularly diverse community. We are sort of, I think there's like a technical immigration term, but we're one of sort of the
Mhm.
stop off points for refugees. So historically, there have been different waves of refugees. We have a huge Filipino population up here. Um, and so we're trying to really take advantage of what Canadian publishing is doing by way of reflecting the diversity of the Canadian public. We are not a homogenous white settler group of people.
Mhm.
There are an amazing breadth of stories, and there's a lot of history that we haven't even like, depending on when you went through the education system,
Mhm.
have not even discussed. Like it was
good call.
interesting discussing, like one of our staff members is an American who's now become a Canadian citizen, but things like the Komagata Maru, like it was up on we were discussing it last year for May Asian Canadian History Month and trying to
Mhm.
explain like the history of that. And I didn't learn about that until university when I took
Yeah.
an Asian Canadian literature class. And then it was like, surprise, part of your
Yeah,
history
right.
that you
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
know because no one
That's
taught
right.
you in school.
There's a whole other
Um,
world out there.
yes,
Yeah.
we're, we did a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
here's how you learn about it. And
Mhm.
these are the stories that people tell about their experiences. And it's always sort of in some ways, I feel like it's a soft launch for people to understand about the world around them. Like we've taken a big step. It's not CanLit, but we're doing sort of, it's become the Vogue thing, read around the world. Like we have a whole read around the world section that we're trying
Mhm.
to encourage um, folks to read those stories in the hopes that it sort of jumps them into other understandings, either of Canada and our history or how we relate to the rest of the world.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a fantastic thing. I mean, it just harkens back to why we started this podcast, which is to better understand booksellers and how they're so important to their communities and beyond. And Jen, I think you have uh, magnificently and poignantly displayed very good examples of why that is so true. I think we're out of time, aren't we, Dani?
Yes, we are, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought so. I had
Yeah.
that feeling
Yeah.
too, which I think is a really great ending note. I just
Mhm.
want to take a moment to thank our very special guest, Jenn Baerg Steyn, for her time and wonderful discussion this evening. This, which is the second episode of The Front Matter Season 2, will release next week, Wednesday, March 25th. So stay tuned for that announcement. We are so thrilled to have spent the time with Jenn tonight. Please like, share, follow at Bay Press, and of course, Yellowknife Books, and visit your local bookstore and support great books and buy great books from great indie booksellers like Yellowknife Books. Thanks again, Jenn.
Yeah, no
We made
problem.
this
It was
one.
my pleasure.
Okay. Dani, signing off. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Look forward to more podcasts.
Okay. Take care,
All
everybody.
right.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Right.